Let's move it right along. So our next presenter is an application penetration tester here at Walmart, and says working on proactive testing team gives her an excellent opportunity to fit the small piece of testing into a larger enterprise picture. She holds a bachelor's and master's from Texas A&M University and has numerous certifications, including the Offensive Security Certified Professional certification. With that being said, round of applause for Dori Clark.
Hi. Hi guys, I'm Dori, as he said. I'm also excited that you got to fit Texas into that. So I'm here to talk about finding all the things and why that's important and why we care. So you guys may have seen it happens a lot on different bug bounties when you read, and somebody found this like weird website that was bought by some company 3 years ago from somebody else 4 years ago, rolled up, and the finding is really lame, but you have to find the page first. So one of the reasons I want to just kind of tell you why it's important before we roll into it a little more, I think why we care and why this has become a lot more prevalent is, first, bug bounty programs exist now. So there's an incentive for people to be, financial incentive to go out and develop applications to go out and find things. So it's a lot easier than it used to be. There's a lot more single-click buttons that work really well. So your attackers are finding these things a lot quicker and faster than they used to. The idea that something can exist out there and not be seen when there's at least 30 companies mapping the entire internet daily for things that change, it's kind of a quaint idea. So even these ephemeral subdomains that may only be online for 30 minutes a day are getting tracked and found in multiple different systems. So first, I just kind of want to walk you through just kind of the high level of kind of just a framework for how you might go about some different means of identifying external assets that might not be recorded or known about. So starting with targeting. And if I was going to highlight out of all these things on this page, what I think is the most important would absolutely be targeting and monitoring. So targeting is the most significant because that is where you really find out what is relevant, and if your scope is not set properly from the beginning, you could be missing 50 to 70% of your results as you flow through, because this is kind of a waterfall process. So targeting is the phase of just really identifying the assets that you're going after, and it's more of a business phase. So what lines, what type of industry, what is that company doing, what are they about, not necessarily technical details. The next thing is just going through, looking up everything that's registered, and from there expanding those domains out to related domains, going through subdomains, and then the supports and services and contents and technologies are the things that you would want to enumerate for that monitoring tool. So you would want to find out what's running, what does it look like, what kinds of headers does it have, different characteristics, and keeping those. And the monitoring phase is where you're just going to be monitoring those over and over and over. Did this domain go up? Did it go down? Did it change? Did they present some new content? And most of the time, what has changed is a lot more interesting than what has stayed the same. So breaking that out just into some of the very, very high-level concepts. Targeting, as I said, is really more of, think of yourself like Jim Cramer, stock analyst. You want to know, is that company buying something? Are they selling something? Are they making market moves? Are they changing the way they do business? Are they hiring even new people? So going from there, domains, there's kind of a few ways, and I'll talk about this in just a bit more detail, but I mentioned just looking for what's registered, and then correlation is going through DNS records and finding different things that are in common, stepping through, going through source code, scraping through different certificates, different internet databases and records that have been collected, and just looking for those root domains that may be associated with whatever business is your target. And then from there, subdomains is much easier. There's a lot of tools that aggregate and just kind of walk through and find all those different subdomains. And then the last part is what I mentioned as building in the monitoring framework. So stepping through targeting, as I said, the most important page. And so the places you're going to look aren't typically the places that you think of, cool hacker data. So it's business journals, going through 10K reports. I included an example here. This is the very first page of Walmart's annual report, which you can grab right off their website. And you can see there that that provides a target-rich environment if you were looking to earn bounties or if you are looking to defend. You instantly see all of this business data that is sharing with you all the different things. And all of these different companies have the potential to be carrying important, relevant data to a business. So going through the business pages and just really understanding everything that that business is doing and everything that they're involved in is significant. So domains, there's a lot of pictures here. That's just some tools that may help you. I'm just going to kind of stick high level here. So going through domains, the actual whois database. When looking at those records, it is important to remember that I can go ahead and register something as the NSA. So most of the time, it's pretty good data. But keep in mind that users submitted it, and they were probably allowed to submit whatever data they selected. So take it with as much authority as it has as a source. Correlation, I mentioned, is going through and looking for different things that are the same, like in DNS records and possibly even in certificates. So for example, if two web pages share a mail server, is there a chance that they belong to the same place? If two different things share a DNS server, it's very possible that they belong to the same place. Be very careful with this one, however, because they may also just be a shared content provider where there's 3,000 different companies that aren't related at all. So you have to make some, in this stage, it's very manual. You have to make some individual judgment calls, and that's where it falls back to if you properly did targeting, you can help make those decisions of, yes, the company is involved with this company. I do believe this domain is related, or no, they're not even in that industry. That doesn't make sense. Like, for example, Walmart doesn't make rocket ships. So if there's domains about rocket ships, there's a very good chance that's not connected. But if they just bought a new company in an acquisition, then there's a very good chance those records are related. You can also go in and grab different certificates and data there. Take a look at those. So with certificates, you can do that, kind of looking at collected and aggregated certificate transparency logs in a very passive way, and just seeing if you can find those names present in different certificates. You can also go through assigned networks belonging to a company and scan those ports and look for certificates, because if an assigned network space of a particular target is hosting a certificate to another domain, there's a very good chance that that domain is related and connected. Another technique that I find to be really helpful and produce results that you almost can't find anywhere else is source code. And I know you might say, but companies don't give out their source code, but there is quite a bit. You can go through and get the mobile applications and decompile those. You can go through the JavaScript and the actual HTML links on the page, because a business may link out to another business. So you can go through and grab just all of the source code that you can find associated with a particular target and go through there using some pattern matching techniques and pull out all the URLs and go through those until you find the ones that are related. It's a very manual process. A good technique is to keep a list of all the things that aren't related and rule those out automatically so that once you've done it once, you don't have to keep going back as you repeat this process over and over again. But it can be very, very effective. Another technique is going through Google and just looking for things like in title or in URL and seeing if you can find those names. And also using Google to go back and validate other results you found by just seeing if there might be a relationship. If you found domain B and you want to know if domain B might be related to domain A. So all of these, for the most part, are just a little bit subjective. So the strategy I like to use is make sure that it matches more than one. So I like to try to connect something at least two ways to make sure that it's really relevant. But when going through and actually kind of in-depth finding domains, you could end up with double or even triple the amount of targets compared to just starting in a standard way. So subdomains. This one is a lot more automated, a lot easier. Some of the tools that are kind of here that you can take a look at. Some of the techniques they're using is just a lot of the same stuff. They're going through web archives. They're going through collective databases. You could even brute force, although it almost seems like the archived internet content is getting better and better and better. So in my experience, brute forcing is only maybe bumping the results by 10%, not nearly as much, whereas even 2 years ago, it might have been a 50% difference. So at the bottom, I ran this tool AMAS, and you can just kind of see the breakout of how different methods that it used to identify. And that is on a single domain. There are 2,800 different subdomains on there. So just thinking back to the earlier step of finding domains, a single missed domain could lead you to 2,800 missed subdomains. And those subdomains could each have multiple ports and services running on them. So content and technologies, there are a lot of ways to monitor some of these things, but some of the things that I think are really interesting in terms of keeping track of changes over time as you go. When ports come open and close, when things turn on and off, when sites add complete extensions, maybe some entire functional modules that weren't there before. Maybe they change, they used to use WordPress and now they're using a custom developed site. Or the entire look and feel of the site has changed and you can go back and see what it looked like a month ago with a historical view. Or I mentioned here Shodan. Shodan has their own monitoring service where they'll help you do a lot of this. But the idea is to really get a feel for what's out there. And the second it's changed, if you are somebody like myself on a proactive team, that presents an opportunity to go out there and realize somebody changed something and they didn't tell you, and you need to go take a look at it because it could be an entirely different piece of content than what you reviewed in a security review a year prior. And if you are an attacker, being there in that first hour, if you kind of read through a lot of the different bug bounties, most of the money's made right after something's deployed. A lot of the mistakes are not glamorous. They were just found very quickly. Somebody was on top of that within 12 hours of it being deployed or less. So just kind of wanted to walk through some quick results of kind of applying this overall framework to some different companies. So this here, I apologize, it's kind of a convoluted image, but the big one's there so you can see it, and the little one's there so you can get an idea of the scope and breadth. This is a mapping of Walmart and the different companies involved. So if I had started this approach looking for just Walmart versus all those 60 bubbles that actually exist, or if I had missed even one layer, I would have missed significant target space, and that is why the biggest thing I can stress is get your targeting done correctly because everything will flow out of there. So that is Walmart in all of its beautifulness with all the different companies that we need to look for and target. I also broke it out by techniques when I was going through there. You can see that domain correlation produces the largest amount of results, but each and every one of these is important. Even a single domain could produce critical flaws. But there's a lot there to be said with domain correlation. And then lastly, just some of the things that I've observed going through and running this process on other companies is you'll find just a lot of public access, admin consoles that you feel probably shouldn't be on the internet and people don't realize are on the internet. You could see different things that indicate they've probably had some type of DNS leak, and you can see names of things that are most likely internal resources and internal assets that have been made available on the internet with like transparency logs and things. You can also kind of just get an idea of certain things that maybe businesses are sensitive about because they may be holding addresses registered in their own name to keep them away from other people. Like you might see like an airline that's taken like, that name sucks and reserved it because they don't want their customers to get a hold of it and start complaining about them on it. You might see, somebody holding addresses. So you kind of see a little behind the curtain there. Also, you see a lot of stuff with dangling pointers and subdomain takeovers and just easy error messages that you can identify very quickly within a few seconds without even looking at it or thinking about it. So I apologize. I know this was very high level, but if anybody wants to get with me or has any questions about very specific implementation techniques, I'll be happy to chat. All right.
Do we have any questions for Dori? Any questions about mapping stuff? Yeah, you can hop to the mic.
Oh. You want the clicker?
We can't get rid of you that fast.
Okay.
Do you have any recommendations on how to, obviously a lot of this stuff's manual, but to share knowledge when you do this with teams? I don't know if you use Maltego or other things like that to share this knowledge, but how do you go through that process?
Oh, you mean like communicating out the results that you found?
Yeah, like if you're working on a team to try to track and make sure that you aren't oversighting somebody else's work, how do you guys build that together?
I think it would depend on like whatever business process that you have in place on your team. So like in our case, we work out of a lot of different just workflow tickets, and we have like a common inventory system where we would look to basically load these results in and then see those there, and then you can go through the ticketing system and see if anybody has any workflow assigned to that.
Good question. Go ahead.
Yeah, what kind of recommendations do you have for an organization to reduce their footprint from, being mapped for internal resources or things like that? Do you have any suggestions for that sort of thing?
You mean like if they don't want their stuff in databases?
Yeah, sure. Like, for example, administrative platforms like maybe our PRTG, for example, that is publicly accessible, but you don't want it to end up being enumerated by an attacker.
Honestly, if it's on the internet, it is probably going to be found fairly easily. I've seen like where you can file requests to get certain things removed from like certificate transparency logs if something was mistakenly added into there. And you can always try with all the individual holders of data, but I mean, there's a number of sources. I think the best thing would be to just be aware of that footprint and clean it up, and that way don't have anything on the internet you don't want found.
Good question. Anybody else? All right, let's thank Dori one more time. Thank you very much.
All right.